The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Windsor Castle as Sergeant Major James Morrison adjusted his ceremonial uniform one final time. 23 years of service to the Crown had taught him that appearances mattered almost as much as actual security, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to discover on this seemingly ordinary Tuesday in October. Morrison had been assigned to Princess Charlotte's personal protection detail for the past 18 months, ever since she turned 9 and her public appearances became more frequent. The young princess had a reputation among the palace staff for being remarkably observant, perhaps too observant for her own good. Her teachers often commented on her ability to notice details that adults missed, a trait that both impressed and, occasionally, concerned those responsible for her safety. As Morrison made his way through the East Wing corridor, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about today. The usual bustle of palace life seemed subdued, and several staff members had avoided making eye contact when he passed them in the hallway. Years of military training had taught him to trust his instincts, and every fiber of his being was telling him that trouble was brewing. Princess Charlotte was scheduled to attend a private tutoring session in the Blue Drawing Room at 9 o'clock, followed by a photography session for an upcoming charity campaign. It was the kind of routine day that had become standard since she began taking on more royal duties, carefully orchestrated to balance her education with her growing public responsibilities. The princess appeared at the top of the grand staircase precisely at 8:45, her dark hair neatly braided and her school uniform immaculate. Morrison had always been struck by her poise, unusual for someone so young, but today there was something different in her demeanor. Her usual bright smile seemed forced, and she kept glancing nervously toward the west wing of the castle. "Good morning, Your Royal Highness," Morrison said, offering a respectful bow as she approached. "Good morning, Sergeant Major," Charlotte replied, but her voice lacked its typical warmth. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, seemingly lost in thought. "May I ask you something?" "Of course, ma'am." "If someone in the family was doing something wrong, something that could hurt people, what would happen to them?" The question caught Morrison completely off guard. In all his years of service, no member of the royal family had ever asked him anything remotely similar. His training kicked in, and he chose his words carefully. "That would depend on many factors, Your Royal Highness. The royal family operates under different protocols than ordinary citizens, but, ultimately, the law applies to everyone." Charlotte nodded slowly, as if she had expected that answer but hoped for something different. She began walking toward the Blue Drawing Room, her small frame dwarfed by the ornate corridor with its priceless paintings and antique furniture. Morrison followed at a respectful distance, but his mind was racing with questions about her unusual inquiry. The tutoring session proceeded normally for the first hour. Charlotte worked diligently on her mathematics while her instructor, Mrs. Helena Fairfax, guided her through complex equations that would challenge students twice her age. Morrison positioned himself near the window, maintaining visual contact with both the princess and the corridor beyond, a practice that had become second nature over the years. It was during the brief break between mathematics and history that everything changed. Mrs. Fairfax had stepped out to retrieve additional materials from her office, leaving Charlotte alone with her thoughts. The princess approached Morrison, her expression serious beyond her years. "Sergeant Major, I need to show you something," she said quietly, glancing toward the door to ensure they were truly alone. "But I'm scared about what might happen." Morrison's protective instincts immediately heightened. "Your Royal Highness, if something has frightened you, it's my duty to address it. You can trust me completely." Charlotte reached into her school bag and withdrew what appeared to be a small digital recording device, the kind often used by journalists or investigators. Morrison's blood pressure spiked as he realized the implications of what she was holding. "Where did you get that?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice level. "I found it," Charlotte said simply. "But what's on it is much more important than where it came from." She pressed play, and Morrison's world tilted on its axis. The recording was crystal clear, capturing a conversation that had obviously taken place in a private room somewhere within the palace walls. The voices were immediately recognizable, and what they were discussing made Morrison's hands shake with a combination of rage and disbelief. The first voice belonged to Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's son from her first marriage. The second voice was that of a man Morrison didn't recognize, but whose accent suggested expensive education and significant wealth. They were discussing something that went far beyond mere gossip or family drama. They were planning something that could potentially destroy not just individual lives, but the very foundation of the monarchy itself. "We need to move quickly," Tom's voice said through the small speaker. The old man won't live forever, and, once Charles is fully settled as king, our window of opportunity closes permanently. The information we have could bring down the entire system if we use it correctly. The Americans are willing to pay substantially more than we initially discussed, the unknown voice replied. But, they want proof, not just allegations. Documents, photographs, recordings of private conversations. The kind of evidence that can't be disputed or explained away. Morrison felt his knees weaken as the full scope of what he was hearing became clear. This wasn't simply about selling royal secrets to tabloid newspapers. This was about systematic betrayal at the highest levels, potentially involving state secrets and information that could compromise national security. Charlotte watched his reaction carefully, her young face etched with worry. I recorded this yesterday evening when I was supposed to be in bed, she explained. I heard voices in Papa's study and thought it might be important. I didn't understand everything they were saying, but I knew it sounded wrong. The recording continued, revealing details that made Morrison's military training scream warnings in his head. Tom was apparently coordinating with foreign contacts to systematically gather and sell sensitive information about the royal family's private activities, financial arrangements, and political relationships. The scope of the operation suggested months or possibly years of planning, with accomplices both inside and outside the palace. The princess knows about the Swiss accounts, Tom's voice continued. That little brat has been asking questions about money transfers and family finances. We need to be careful about what documents we leave accessible. Morrison's protective instincts exploded into full alert. They were talking about Princess Charlotte herself, discussing her as both a potential threat and a possible source of information. The casual dismissal of her as a little brat while simultaneously acknowledging her intelligence and curiosity painted a picture of people who saw her as nothing more than an obstacle to their plans. What exactly does she know? The unknown voice asked. Probably more than she should, Tom replied. The girl has a habit of reading things that aren't meant for children. Financial documents, private correspondence, even classified briefings that Charles sometimes brings home. She's too smart for her own good, and that makes her dangerous to our operation. Charlotte looked up at Morrison with tears beginning to form in her eyes. They want to hurt our family, she said simply. And they think I'm in their way. Morrison's mind immediately shifted into crisis management mode. His primary responsibility was Princess Charlotte's safety, but the implications of what they had just heard extended far beyond protecting one individual. The security of the entire royal family, and potentially the nation itself, was at stake. Your Royal Highness, he said, keeping his voice calm despite the turmoil in his mind, I need you to listen very carefully. What you've discovered is extremely serious, and we need to handle it exactly the right way. First, you're going to be safe. That's my absolute priority, and nothing is going to happen to you. Second, we need to get this information to people who can act on it immediately. Charlotte nodded, showing remarkable composure for someone her age facing such a frightening situation. Who can we trust? She asked. If Tom has been doing this for a long time, he might have helpers we don't know about. It was a remarkably astute observation that highlighted exactly why the conspirators saw her as a threat. Princess Charlotte's ability to think strategically about complex situations was far beyond her years, and her understanding of palace dynamics rivaled that of seasoned staff members. Morrison considered their options carefully. The normal chain of command might be compromised if Tom had indeed been operating for an extended period with inside assistance. They needed to reach someone with both the authority to act decisively and the security clearance to handle sensitive information without triggering premature exposure of the plot. We're going to contact Sir Kenneth Hartwell directly, Morrison decided. Sir Kenneth served as the Queen's private secretary and maintained security protocols that bypassed normal palace communications. He'll know how to proceed without alerting anyone who might be working with Tom. As they prepared to leave the blue drawing room, Morrison noticed unusual activity in the corridor beyond. Several staff members were moving with purpose toward the West Wing, and there seemed to be more security personnel present than normal for a routine Tuesday morning. His instincts told him that events were already moving faster than they had anticipated. Stay close to me, he instructed Charlotte as they stepped into the corridor. We're going to walk normally to Sir Kenneth's office, but if I tell you to do anything, you follow my instructions immediately. They had barely made it halfway down the corridor when Morrison's worst fears were confirmed. Tom Parker Bowles appeared at the far end of the hallway, engaged in animated conversation with someone Morrison recognized as a member of the palace communications team. Tom's presence in this part of the building was unusual, as he rarely had official business that would bring him to the administrative offices. Morrison's training told him that this was likely not a coincidence. If Tom was indeed coordinating a sophisticated operation to gather and sell royal secrets, he would need to maintain careful surveillance of key family members and their activities. Princess Charlotte's movements were carefully scheduled and generally predictable, making it relatively easy for someone with palace access to track her daily routine. Charlotte noticed Tom at the same moment Morrison did, and her grip tightened on the recording device still clutched in her small hand. The physical evidence they were carrying represented both their greatest asset and their most dangerous liability. If Tom suspected what they had discovered, the situation could escalate beyond Morrison's ability to control it using standard security protocols. "Act normally," Morrison whispered. "We're just going to continue walking." But, as they approached the intersection where they would need to turn toward Sir Kenneth's office, Tom looked up and made direct eye contact with Princess Charlotte. Morrison watched the man's expression change from casual interest to something much more focused and calculating. Years of combat experience told him that they had just moved from surveillance to active threat status. Tom began walking toward them with deliberate purpose, his conversation partner following uncertainly behind. Morrison's hand instinctively moved toward the communication device on his belt, ready to call for immediate backup if the situation deteriorated further. Princess Charlotte's safety remained his absolute priority, but the recording in her possession might be the only evidence capable of exposing the full scope of the conspiracy they had stumbled upon. "Charlotte, darling," Tom called out as he approached, his voice carrying the false warmth that Morrison had learned to recognize as a warning sign in potentially dangerous individuals. "What a lovely surprise to see you this morning. I was just discussing some family business with Mr. Peterson here." Morrison noted that Tom had deliberately positioned himself to block their most direct route to Sir Kenneth's office, forcing them to either confront him directly or take a longer path that would provide additional opportunities for unwanted interaction. The tactical nature of his positioning suggested military or security training, information that Morrison immediately filed away as potentially significant. "Good morning," Charlotte replied politely, but Morrison could hear the tension in her voice. Her royal training was serving her well in maintaining proper etiquette despite her fear, but her youth made it impossible to completely hide her emotional state from someone paying careful attention. "I was wondering," Tom continued, stepping closer in a way that Morrison's instincts read as deliberately intimidating, "if you might have seen any unusual activity around the palace lately. Strange sounds, people in unexpected places, that sort of thing. Security is always a concern, as I'm sure Sergeant Major Morrison would agree." The question was clearly a probe, designed to determine how much Charlotte might have seen or heard about activities she wasn't supposed to know about. Morrison recognized it as an interrogation technique, casual in appearance but strategically designed to gather intelligence while appearing to make innocent conversation. Morrison stepped slightly forward, positioning himself between Tom and Princess Charlotte in a movement that appeared natural but effectively established his protective stance. "Princess Charlotte maintains a very structured schedule," he replied carefully. "She's generally focused on her studies and official duties." Tom's eyes narrowed slightly at Morrison's intervention, and the sergeant major realized that he had just identified himself as a potential obstacle to whatever Tom was attempting to accomplish. The dynamic in the corridor had shifted from casual encounter to something approaching confrontation, with Princess Charlotte's safety hanging in the balance. "Of course," Tom said, his smile never wavering but his tone becoming noticeably cooler. "I'm sure you keep very close track of her activities. Perhaps too close, some might say." The implied threat was unmistakable, and Morrison felt his military training surge to the forefront of his consciousness. Tom was essentially warning him that his protective duties might be seen as interference with family matters, a suggestion that could potentially be used to have him removed from Princess Charlotte's security detail. Princess Charlotte surprised both men by speaking up with remarkable clarity and poise. "I should get to my next appointment," she said, her voice steady despite the tension surrounding them. "Mrs. Fairfax will be expecting me to return promptly." It was a diplomatic exit strategy that demonstrated her understanding of the situation while providing them with a legitimate reason to disengage from the increasingly uncomfortable encounter. Morrison felt a surge of pride at her quick thinking, even as his concern for her safety continued to escalate. "Of course, darling," Tom replied, but his eyes remained fixed on the small bag Charlotte was carrying. Morrison realized with growing alarm that Tom might suspect she was carrying something significant, possibly even the recording device that contained evidence of his treasonous activities. As they prepared to continue toward Sir Kenneth's office, Morrison made a decision that would prove crucial to everything that followed. Instead of taking the direct route, which would require passing directly by Tom and his companion, he guided Princess Charlotte toward a service corridor that palace security personnel used for discreet movement throughout the building. The change in direction was subtle enough to appear natural, but Tom's reaction confirmed Morrison's suspicions about the man's true intentions. Rather than continuing with his original conversation, Tom immediately excused himself from his companion and began following them at a distance that maintained plausible deniability while keeping them under observation. Morrison's communication device buzzed softly, indicating an incoming message from Palace Security Headquarters. The timing seemed suspicious, and he made the tactical decision to ignore it temporarily rather than risk revealing their current location or destination to anyone who might be monitoring official communications channels. The service corridor provided them with multiple route options and several concealed alcoves where they could potentially evade pursuit if the situation deteriorated further. Morrison's familiarity with the palace's hidden passages and security features had never been more valuable than it was becoming at this moment. "He's following us," Charlotte whispered, demonstrating the same observational skills that had led to their current discovery. "I know," Morrison replied quietly. "We're going to use that to our advantage." Morrison had formulated a plan that would allow them to reach Sir Kenneth's office while potentially gathering additional information about Tom's capabilities and resources. By taking an indirect route through areas where their movement could be carefully controlled, he hoped to determine whether Tom was acting alone or had immediate support available within the palace. They reached a junction where 3 corridors intersected, providing Morrison with the tactical advantage he had been seeking. He could position Princess Charlotte in a secure alcove while maintaining visual surveillance of anyone following them, effectively turning the tables on Tom's pursuit. "Wait here for exactly 30 seconds, he instructed Charlotte, guiding her into a recessed doorway that was virtually invisible from the main corridor. "If I'm not back by then, use the emergency communication device in your bag to contact Sir Kenneth directly." Morrison had given Princess Charlotte the emergency device during her first week under his protection, a precaution that had seemed overly cautious at the time but now appeared remarkably prescient. The device would immediately alert Sir Kenneth's office and provide GPS coordinates for her exact location within the palace. Moving with the stealth that had made him valuable during his military service, Morrison positioned himself where he could observe Tom's approach without being detected. What he saw confirmed his worst fears about the sophistication of the conspiracy they had uncovered. Tom was not alone. He was accompanied by 2 individuals Morrison didn't recognize, but whose movements and positioning suggested professional security or intelligence training. They were coordinating their approach using subtle hand signals, indicating a level of planning and preparation that went far beyond spontaneous curiosity about Princess Charlotte's activities. The implications were staggering. Tom had immediate access to trained personnel willing to engage in surveillance and potentially hostile activities within the palace itself. This suggested either corruption within existing security ranks or the infiltration of outside operatives into positions where they could operate with relative impunity. Morrison realized that their situation had escalated far beyond what could be handled through normal security channels. They were potentially facing an organized conspiracy with resources and capabilities that rivaled official palace security operations. Princess Charlotte's safety now depended on reaching Sir Kenneth's office without triggering a direct confrontation that could result in the loss of their crucial evidence. He returned to Princess Charlotte's hiding place with new urgency, his mind racing through tactical options that could ensure both her safety and the preservation of the recording that might be their only proof of the conspiracy's existence. "We need to move quickly now," he told her quietly. "There are more people involved than we initially realized, and we need to reach safety before they can organize a more effective response." Charlotte nodded with remarkable composure, clutching the recording device tightly as they prepared for what Morrison recognized might be the most dangerous few minutes of both their lives. Morrison led Princess Charlotte through a maze of service corridors that few people in the palace knew existed. These passages had been designed during wartime to allow the royal family to move unseen throughout the building, and they now served as their lifeline to safety. The narrow walkways were dimly lit by emergency lighting, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with their movement. As they navigated the hidden route, Morrison's communication device continued buzzing with increasing frequency. Each ignored message heightened his suspicion that their movements were being monitored through official channels, possibly by someone with access to palace security systems. The conspiracy was clearly more sophisticated than either he or Princess Charlotte had initially imagined. Sergeant Major, Charlotte whispered as they paused at a junction between corridors, I think there's something else you should know about the recording. Morrison's attention immediately focused on her words. Any additional information could prove crucial to understanding the full scope of what they were facing. What is it, Your Royal Highness? There were names mentioned, people I recognized from family gatherings and official functions. Tom wasn't working alone, and some of the people helping him have been in our house for years. The revelation sent chills through Morrison's entire body. If Princess Charlotte's observation was accurate, they were dealing with a long-term infiltration of the royal household by individuals who had gained trust and access over extended periods. The security implications were catastrophic, extending far beyond simple information theft into potential threats against the physical safety of every family member. Do you remember any specific names? Morrison asked, knowing that this intelligence could be vital for Sir Kenneth's immediate response to the crisis. Charlotte closed her eyes for a moment, clearly trying to recall details from a recording that had frightened and confused her. Mrs. Aberdeen from the kitchen staff was mentioned. And someone called James who works in the communications office. There was also talk about someone in Papa's security detail who was providing schedules and movement information. Morrison felt his world shift as the full implications became clear. If Tom had indeed compromised members of the king's personal security team, then no one in the family was truly safe. Standard security protocols would be useless against threats that originated from within the very system designed to protect them. They reached another decision point in their route, and Morrison had to choose between a path that would get them to Sir Kenneth's office more quickly and one that provided better concealment but required more time. Given what Charlotte had just revealed about the extent of the conspiracy, speed seemed more important than stealth. We're going to move faster now, he decided. Stay close to me and don't worry about being quiet. They emerged from the service corridor into a section of the palace that Morrison knew was monitored by security cameras, but he calculated that Sir Kenneth's office was now close enough to reach before anyone could organize effective interference. The risk of exposure was outweighed by the need to get Princess Charlotte and her evidence to safety as quickly as possible. As they hurried down the final corridor toward their destination, Morrison noticed something that made his blood run cold. The usual security guard who was always posted outside Sir Kenneth's office was nowhere to be seen. In all his years of service, Morrison had never seen that post abandoned during normal business hours. He immediately halted their advance, pulling Princess Charlotte into an alcove while he assessed the situation. His instincts were screaming warnings about the absence of expected security protocols, and years of military training told him that they might be walking into a trap. What's wrong? Charlotte asked, picking up on his sudden tension. Someone should be at that post, Morrison replied quietly. The fact that they're not suggests that either something has happened to them, or they've been deliberately removed. Morrison activated his emergency communication device, using a coded frequency that bypassed normal palace channels and connected directly to the highest levels of Royal Protection Services. Within seconds, he was connected to Commander Sarah Walsh, the head of personal protection for senior royals. Morrison here, emergency code red, he said quietly into the device. I need immediate backup at Sir Kenneth's office location, and I need to know the current status of all security posts in this sector. Commander Walsh's response confirmed his worst fears. Morrison, we've been looking for you and Princess Charlotte for the past 20 minutes. There are reports of unauthorized personnel in the palace, and several communication systems have been compromised. What's your exact location? The revelation that they were being actively sought by legitimate security forces while simultaneously being hunted by conspirators created a complex tactical situation. Morrison needed to verify that he was indeed speaking with the real Commander Walsh and not someone impersonating her voice through compromised communication channels. Commander, I need you to confirm your identity using the personal recognition code we established during Princess Charlotte's initial security briefing, Morrison requested. Confirmed. Royal Rose Garden, September 15th, your daughter's birthday gift discussion, Commander Walsh replied immediately, providing details that only the genuine commander would know. Satisfied with her identity, Morrison quickly briefed her on their discovery and current situation. The shock in her voice was evident as she absorbed the implications of what Princess Charlotte had recorded and witnessed. Morrison, this is far bigger than anything we've prepared for, Commander Walsh said. I'm sending an extraction team to your location immediately, but you need to know that we don't currently know who we can trust within the palace security structure. Treat everyone as potentially compromised until we can sort this out. The communication ended just as Morrison heard footsteps approaching from the direction they had come. Multiple people were moving with purpose toward their location, and their coordination suggested professional training. He realized that Tom and his associates had somehow determined their route and were closing in on their position. "Your Royal Highness, we need to move right now," Morrison said urgently. "Our safety depends on reaching Commander Walsh's people before anyone else reaches us." They abandoned stealth entirely and ran openly down the corridor toward Sir Kenneth's office, knowing that their lives now depended on speed rather than concealment. Behind them, Morrison could hear their pursuers also abandoning any pretense of casual movement and beginning an open pursuit. As they reached Sir Kenneth's office door, Morrison was relieved to see it standing open with Sir Kenneth himself visible inside, apparently conducting normal business. The familiar sight of the man who had served as a cornerstone of palace administration for over 15 years provided Morrison with the first sense of relief he had felt since this crisis began. "Sir Kenneth," Morrison called out as they approached. "Emergency situation requiring your immediate attention." Sir Kenneth looked up from his desk with surprise, but his expression immediately shifted to concern as he took in their obvious distress and the sounds of pursuit echoing from the corridor behind them. His decades of experience managing royal family crises kicked in immediately. "Close the door and engage the security lock," he instructed calmly. "Princess Charlotte, please have a seat while Sergeant Major Morrison briefs me on the situation." Morrison quickly secured the office while Sir Kenneth activated privacy protocols that would prevent their conversation from being monitored through electronic surveillance. The office's soundproofing and security features made it one of the few truly secure locations within the palace for discussing sensitive matters. "Sir, we've uncovered evidence of a conspiracy involving Tom Parker Bowles and, potentially several members of the palace staff," Morrison began, speaking rapidly to convey the essential information as quickly as possible. "Princess Charlotte recorded a conversation that reveals systematic betrayal of royal family security and apparent coordination with foreign contacts." Sir Kenneth's face grew increasingly grave as Morrison outlined what they had discovered. When Princess Charlotte produced the recording device and played several excerpts from what she had captured, the veteran administrator's composure finally cracked. "Dear God," he whispered after hearing Tom's voice discussing the sale of royal family secrets. "How long has this been going on?" "Based on what we heard, possibly months or even years," Morrison replied. "And, Sir Kenneth, there's more." Princess Charlotte recognized names of current staff members who were mentioned as participants in the conspiracy. "We may be looking at widespread infiltration of palace security." Sir Kenneth immediately activated the highest-level security protocols, sending coded messages to select individuals whose loyalty was absolutely beyond question. Within minutes, the office was surrounded by protection officers whose identities and backgrounds had been personally verified by Sir Kenneth himself. "Princess Charlotte," Sir Kenneth said gently, "you've shown remarkable courage in bringing this information forward. What you've done may have saved not just your family, but the integrity of the monarchy itself." Charlotte looked up at him with eyes that seemed far older than her years. "Will Tom be arrested?" she asked simply. "That will depend on what additional evidence we can gather and what authorities determine about the full scope of his activities," Sir Kenneth replied honestly. "But I can promise you that immediate steps are being taken to protect your family and investigate everyone who might be involved." Morrison's communication device activated with an incoming priority message from Commander Walsh. "Morrison, we have a problem. Tom Parker Bowles and several unknown associates have barricaded themselves in the West Wing Communications Center. They appear to have access to palace security systems and are attempting to destroy computer records." The news confirmed Morrison's worst fears about the sophistication of the conspiracy. If Tom and his associates had gained control of the communications center, they could potentially monitor all security activities, manipulate electronic locks throughout the palace, and destroy evidence of their activities before investigators could secure it. "Sir Kenneth, they're trying to cover their tracks," Morrison reported. "If they succeed in destroying the computer records, the recording Princess Charlotte made might be our only evidence of their activities." Sir Kenneth's expression hardened with determination. "Then, we need to ensure that recording is preserved and that additional evidence is gathered before they can complete their destruction of the electronic records." He activated a secure communication system that connected directly to intelligence services outside the palace, ensuring that external agencies were immediately informed of the situation and could begin coordinating response efforts that couldn't be compromised by internal corruption. "Princess Charlotte," Sir Kenneth continued, "I need to ask you some very important questions about exactly what you saw and heard." The details you provide could be crucial for stopping these people and protecting your family. Charlotte straightened in her chair with remarkable composure. I'll tell you everything I remember, she said clearly. Over the next 30 minutes, Princess Charlotte provided a detailed account of how she had discovered the conspiracy, what she had observed about Tom's activities, and every name and detail she could remember from the recorded conversation. Her memory proved to be remarkably accurate and comprehensive, providing investigators with a roadmap for understanding the conspiracy's structure and scope. Morrison listened with growing admiration for the young princess's courage and intelligence. She had not only stumbled upon a sophisticated plot against her family, but had gathered evidence and reported it through appropriate channels despite obvious personal danger. Her actions demonstrated maturity and judgment that would have been impressive in someone twice her age. As Charlotte finished her account, Commander Walsh arrived with a team of protection officers whose identities had been independently verified. The relief Morrison felt at seeing genuine reinforcements was overwhelming, knowing that Princess Charlotte's safety was now assured by people whose loyalty was absolutely beyond question. Sergeant Major Morrison, Commander Walsh said, you and Princess Charlotte have potentially prevented a catastrophic breach of royal family security. The information you've provided is already being used to coordinate response efforts with multiple agencies. She turned to Princess Charlotte with obvious respect. Your Royal Highness, your courage and quick thinking have made you a hero. What you've done today will be remembered as one of the most important contributions to royal family security in modern history. Charlotte smiled for the first time since the crisis began. I just wanted to protect my family, she said simply. Morrison felt a surge of pride at her words, knowing that her natural instinct to protect those she loved had ultimately saved not just individual lives, but the integrity of institutions that millions of people depended on. Her actions had demonstrated that real courage often came from the most unexpected sources. Sir Kenneth activated his communication system again, receiving updates on the ongoing operation to secure the communication center and apprehend Tom and his associates. The news was encouraging but incomplete, with security forces having successfully isolated the conspirators but not yet gained full control of the compromised systems. The immediate danger to the royal family has been contained, he reported. But the investigation into the full scope of this conspiracy will likely take weeks or months to complete. We're dealing with a level of infiltration that requires careful examination of every person with access to sensitive information. Morrison realized that his own role in protecting Princess Charlotte was far from over. If the conspiracy had indeed involved multiple palace staff members over an extended period, the process of identifying and removing all compromised individuals would require maintaining heightened security protocols for the foreseeable future. Sir Kenneth, Morrison said, I request permission to remain on Princess Charlotte's protection detail until all security reviews have been completed and normal protocols can be safely resumed. Granted immediately, Sir Kenneth replied without hesitation. Your performance today has demonstrated exactly the kind of judgment and dedication we need during this investigation. Princess Charlotte looked up at Morrison with obvious relief. Thank you, Sergeant Major, she said quietly. I feel much safer knowing you'll still be watching out for me. Morrison felt his chest tighten with emotion at her words. In all his years of military service and royal protection duty, he had never felt more honored to serve than he did at that moment. Princess Charlotte's trust and gratitude made every challenge and risk worthwhile. As the immediate crisis stabilized, Morrison began thinking about the long-term implications of what they had discovered. The conspiracy's sophistication suggested that similar threats might exist that hadn't yet been detected, and the palace's security protocols would need comprehensive review and enhancement to prevent future infiltration attempts. Commander Walsh was coordinating with intelligence services to trace the conspiracy's connections beyond the palace walls, particularly focusing on the foreign contacts Tom had mentioned in the recorded conversation. The international implications of selling royal family secrets could affect diplomatic relationships and national security in ways that extended far beyond the immediate family. Princess Charlotte, Sir Kenneth said gently, you'll need to provide a formal statement about what you witnessed and recorded. It won't be pleasant to relive these events, but your testimony will be crucial for ensuring that justice is served and that these people can't hurt anyone else. Charlotte nodded with determination. I understand, she said. Whatever needs to be done to protect my family and make sure this doesn't happen again. Morrison marveled at her resilience and maturity. Despite being frightened and thrust into an adult situation far beyond her years, she was prepared to do whatever was necessary to see justice done. Her character reminded him why protecting the royal family was more than just a job, it was about safeguarding people whose personal qualities justified the public trust they carried. As evening approached, the full scope of the day's discoveries began to sink in for everyone involved. What had started as a routine Tuesday morning had become a defining moment in royal family security, exposing vulnerabilities that could have led to catastrophic consequences if not for the courage and quick thinking of one young princess. Morrison looked at Princess Charlotte, who was now safely surrounded by verified protection officers and answering questions with remarkable composure, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction about his chosen profession. Days like this reminded him why his service mattered and why the trust placed in him by the royal family was both an honor and a sacred responsibility. The investigation into Tom Parker Bowles' conspiracy expanded rapidly over the following days, revealing a network of corruption that shocked even the most experienced security professionals. Princess Charlotte found herself at the center of the most significant royal security crisis in decades, her recorded evidence serving as the foundation for criminal charges that would ultimately reach the highest levels of government. Morrison maintained constant vigilance over Princess Charlotte as teams of investigators worked around the clock to unravel the conspiracy's full scope. The young princess handled the intense scrutiny with remarkable grace, answering questions from detectives, intelligence officers, and senior palace officials with clarity and courage that impressed everyone involved in the case. The recording device that Charlotte had used proved to contain far more damaging evidence than anyone initially realized. Technical analysis revealed multiple conversations spanning several weeks, documenting not only Tom's coordination with foreign contacts but also his systematic recruitment of palace staff members who had access to sensitive information about royal family activities and security procedures. Commander Walsh briefed Morrison on the investigation's progress during their daily security meetings.
The scope of infiltration was extraordinary, she explained.
Tom had been operating for at least 18 months, possibly longer, using his family connection to gain access and, then, leveraging financial incentives to corrupt staff members in key positions.
Morrison shook his head in disbelief at the sophistication of the operation. How did he manage to avoid detection for so long?
By being patient and methodical, Commander Walsh replied. He never took information directly himself, always working through intermediaries who thought they were helping with legitimate family business.
Most of his recruited assets didn't even realize they were participating in espionage activities.
The investigation revealed that Tom's primary contact was a representative of a private intelligence firm that specialized in gathering information about high-profile individuals for wealthy clients who were never identified publicly. The firm operated internationally and had apparently been collecting detailed intelligence about multiple royal families and government officials across Europe. Princess Charlotte's courage in recording and reporting the conspiracy had not only exposed Tom's activities but had potentially disrupted a much larger intelligence operation that threatened the security of allied governments. Intelligence agencies in several countries were now cooperating to trace the network's full extent and identify all of its targets and clients. Morrison accompanied Princess Charlotte to her formal interview with senior investigators, watching with pride as she answered complex questions about what she had observed and recorded. Her memory proved remarkably detailed, and she was able to provide investigators with insights about palace routines and staff behavior that helped them understand how the conspiracy had operated undetected. Princess Charlotte, the lead investigator, said gently, "You mentioned hearing Tom discuss someone called the American contact.
Can you remember anything specific about what was said about this person?"
Charlotte closed her eyes, concentrating on memories that had initially frightened her but were now proving crucial to understanding the conspiracy's international connections. Tom said the American was willing to pay much more money than they had originally agreed on, but wanted better proof of everything. Documents and photographs, not just stories.
Did they mention what kind of documents specifically?
Financial records, Charlotte replied clearly. And something about Papa's private meetings with government ministers. Tom said the American was particularly interested in information about discussions that weren't part of official government business. Morrison felt his concern deepen as he realized the potential constitutional implications of what Charlotte was describing. If Tom had indeed been gathering intelligence about the king's private communications with government officials, the conspiracy could have compromised the fundamental relationship between the monarchy and elected government. The investigators exchanged meaningful looks before continuing their questioning.
"Princess Charlotte, did you hear anything about how this information was being transmitted to the American contact?"
"There was talk about a special computer system that couldn't be traced," Charlotte said. Tom mentioned that someone in the communications office had set up a way to send information that looked like normal palace business but was actually going somewhere else. This revelation prompted an immediate expansion of the investigation to examine all electronic communication systems within the palace. Technical experts discovered sophisticated software that had been installed on multiple computers, allowing authorized users to simultaneously transmit information to external recipients while maintaining the appearance of conducting normal palace business. Morrison realized that Princess Charlotte's observational skills and memory had provided investigators with the key to understanding how the conspiracy had operated for such an extended period without detection. Her ability to recall specific details from conversations she had overheard was proving more valuable than extensive technical surveillance efforts. As the investigation progressed, additional arrests were made among palace staff members who had been recruited by Tom to provide information about royal family activities. The arrests were conducted quietly to avoid public attention, but Morrison knew that the removal of compromised personnel represented a fundamental restructuring of palace security operations. Princess Charlotte continued her normal educational activities while maintaining cooperation with the ongoing investigation, but Morrison could see the strain that constant questioning and heightened security measures were placing on her young shoulders. Despite her remarkable maturity, she was still a child dealing with adult situations that would challenge someone with far more experience. "Your Royal Highness," Morrison said during one of their walks through the palace gardens, "how are you managing everything that's happening?"
It's perfectly normal to feel overwhelmed by all these questions and interviews.
Charlotte smiled with the kind of wisdom that seemed far beyond her years. "I keep thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't recorded that conversation," she replied. "Tom and his helpers could have kept hurting our family for years. Sometimes doing the right thing is scary, but not doing it would be much worse." Morrison felt a surge of admiration for her perspective and resilience. Princess Charlotte had not only exposed a dangerous conspiracy but was handling its aftermath with grace and determination that demonstrated genuine character rather than simple royal training. The investigation took a dramatic turn when analysis of Tom's electronic communications revealed evidence of coordination with similar operations targeting other European royal families. Intelligence services discovered that the private firm Tom had been working with was part of an international network that specialized in gathering sensitive information about government officials and royal family members for clients whose identities remained hidden behind multiple layers of corporate secrecy. Commander Walsh briefed Morrison on these international developments during their morning security review. "Princess Charlotte's courage may have exposed something much bigger than we initially realized," she explained. "Intelligence agencies in 6 countries are now cooperating to investigate what appears to be a systematic effort to compromise royal family security across Europe."
"What does that mean for Princess Charlotte's safety?" Morrison asked, his protective instincts immediately focusing on his primary responsibility. "Enhanced security protocols will remain in place indefinitely," Commander Walsh replied.
"The investigation has revealed that Tom's operation specifically identified her as a potential source of information about family activities, which means she was already being targeted before she discovered the conspiracy." This revelation reinforced Morrison's determination to maintain the highest possible security standards for Princess Charlotte's protection. The knowledge that she had been specifically targeted by professional intelligence operatives transformed his role from routine protection duty to active defense against sophisticated threats. The formal criminal charges against Tom Parker Bowles were filed under the Official Secrets Act, reflecting the national security implications of his activities.
The charges carried potential sentences that could result in decades of imprisonment, signaling government determination to treat the conspiracy as seriously as it deserved.
Princess Charlotte was called to provide testimony in closed legal proceedings that would remain sealed to protect both her privacy and national security interests. Morrison accompanied her to these sessions, observing as she answered questions from prosecutors and defense attorneys with remarkable composure and accuracy. "Princess Charlotte," the prosecutor said during her testimony, "in your own words, can you tell the court why you decided to make the recording that exposed this conspiracy?" "I heard people talking about hurting my family," Charlotte replied simply. "I didn't understand everything they were saying, but I knew it sounded wrong. I thought if I recorded it, someone could help me understand what was happening and make sure everyone stayed safe." Her straightforward answer perfectly captured both her innocent motivation and the profound implications of what she had discovered. The judge commended her courage and civic responsibility, noting that her actions had potentially prevented far more serious damage to national security interests. Morrison watched the legal proceedings with growing respect for Princess Charlotte's character and strength. Despite being thrust into an adult world of espionage and legal complexity, she maintained her natural honesty and integrity while providing testimony that would prove crucial for securing convictions against all the conspirators. The investigation revealed that Tom's recruitment of palace staff had been systematic and sophisticated, targeting individuals who had financial pressures or personal grievances that made them vulnerable to corruption. The recruitment process had taken months for each individual, involving gradual introduction of requests that seemed harmless initially but eventually escalated into serious breaches of security protocols. Mrs. Aberdeen, the kitchen staff member whose name Charlotte had remembered from the recording, proved to be one of Tom's most valuable assets. Her position provided access to information about royal family dining schedules, private meetings, and informal gatherings that revealed patterns of behavior and security arrangements that could be exploited by hostile interests. James Morrison, the communications office employee mentioned in the recording, had installed the software that allowed Tom's operation to intercept and redirect sensitive communications. His technical expertise had made it possible for the conspiracy to operate for such an extended period without triggering automatic security alerts that should have detected unauthorized access to palace computer systems. The member of the king's security detail who had provided scheduling information was perhaps the most dangerous component of the conspiracy, as his position provided access to advanced knowledge of royal movements and security arrangements that could have facilitated physical attacks or surveillance operations against family members. Morrison realized that Princess Charlotte's decision to record and report what she had overheard had prevented potential disasters that extended far beyond simple information theft. The conspiracy's access to security schedules and procedures could have enabled serious physical threats against any member of the royal family. As the investigation neared its conclusion, intelligence services provided briefings to senior palace officials about the international implications of what Princess Charlotte had exposed. The private intelligence firm that had been Tom's primary contact was linked to similar operations in 12 countries, suggesting a coordinated effort to compromise government and royal family security on a global scale. Princess Charlotte attended these briefings at Sir Kenneth's invitation, her status as the person who had exposed the conspiracy earning her a place in discussions usually reserved for senior security officials. Morrison watched with pride as she listened carefully to complex explanations of international intelligence operations and asked thoughtful questions that demonstrated her understanding of the situation's broader implications. Princess Charlotte, the intelligence briefer said, "Your actions have contributed to the most significant counterintelligence success in recent years. The information you provided has allowed us to identify and disrupt operations that threaten not just your family, but allied governments and institutions across Europe." Charlotte nodded seriously at the praise, but her response demonstrated the humility and sense of duty that Morrison had come to recognize as her defining characteristics. "I just did what anyone would do to protect their family," she said simply. The investigation's conclusion brought formal recognition of Princess Charlotte's contribution to national security, though the specific details would remain classified to protect ongoing operations against the international intelligence network that Tom's conspiracy had exposed. Her courage and quick thinking had prevented what could have been a catastrophic compromise of royal family security. Morrison continued his role as her primary protection officer, but their relationship had evolved beyond standard security protocols into genuine mutual respect and trust. Princess Charlotte had demonstrated that she possessed not only the observational skills to detect sophisticated threats, but the moral courage to take personal risks to protect others. As normal palace routines gradually resumed following the enhanced security measures implemented during the investigation, Morrison reflected on how fundamentally the experience had changed his understanding of his protective responsibilities. Princess Charlotte had proven herself capable of being both a potential target and an active participant in her own security, requiring protection strategies that recognized her intelligence and judgment rather than treating her simply as a person to be guarded. The conspiracy's exposure had revealed vulnerabilities in palace security that extended far beyond individual staff corruption into systematic weaknesses in protocols and procedures that had been exploited by sophisticated adversaries. The comprehensive security review that followed would reshape royal protection operations for generations, with Princess Charlotte's experience serving as a case study in both threat detection and response procedures. Morrison knew that the experience had been traumatic for Princess Charlotte despite her remarkable resilience, and he remained vigilant for any signs that the stress of the investigation and its aftermath might be affecting her emotional well-being. Her continued cooperation with ongoing security measures and her apparent eagerness to resume normal activities suggested that she was handling the situation better than many adults would have managed under similar circumstances. The formal conclusion of the criminal proceedings brought lengthy prison sentences for Tom Parker Bowles and his co-conspirators, sending a clear message about the consequences of betraying royal family trust and compromising national security. Princess Charlotte's testimony had been crucial in securing these convictions, demonstrating that even the youngest members of the royal family possessed the civic duty and moral courage necessary to uphold the institutions they represented. 6 months after the conspiracy's exposure, Princess Charlotte had returned to what appeared to be a normal routine, but Morrison knew that both their lives had been permanently changed by the events that had thrust her into the center of the most significant royal security crisis in modern history. The young princess continued her education and public duties with characteristic grace, but Morrison could see the subtle ways that the experience had matured her understanding of the responsibilities and dangers that came with her position. The international investigation that had grown from Princess Charlotte's courageous recording had yielded extraordinary results. Intelligence agencies across Europe and North America had dismantled a network of private intelligence firms that had been systematically targeting government officials, royal family members, and other high-profile individuals for nearly a decade. Commander Walsh provided Morrison with regular briefings on the investigation's ongoing developments, many of which remained classified but demonstrated the far-reaching impact of what Princess Charlotte had discovered. "The network we exposed was far more sophisticated than anything we had previously encountered," she explained during one of their weekly meetings. They were operating in 14 countries and had compromised security around dozens of high-profile targets. Morrison felt a continuing sense of pride in Princess Charlotte's role in exposing such a significant threat, but he also remained concerned about the long-term implications for her safety. The conspiracy had specifically targeted her as a potential source of information, and the international scope of the operation suggested that similar threats might continue to emerge in the future. Princess Charlotte's relationship with her family had deepened as a result of the crisis, with both her parents and grandparents expressing their gratitude for her courage and quick thinking. King Charles had personally commended her actions during a private family meeting, acknowledging that her bravery had potentially saved not just individual lives but the integrity of the monarchy itself. "Papa told me that what I did was important not just for our family, but for the country," Charlotte confided to Morrison during one of their walks through the palace gardens. "But sometimes I still feel scared about what might have happened if those people had found out I was recording them." Morrison appreciated her honesty about the lingering effects of the traumatic experience. Despite her remarkable resilience, she was still a child who had faced genuine danger while making decisions that most adults would have found difficult. Her ability to acknowledge her fears while continuing to fulfill her responsibilities demonstrated exceptional emotional maturity. The enhanced security protocols that had been implemented during the crisis had evolved into permanent changes in how royal family protection operated. Morrison's role had expanded beyond traditional bodyguard duties to include active participation in threat assessment and intelligence-gathering activities that helped identify potential security risks before they could develop into active conspiracies. Princess Charlotte had been given specialized training in personal security awareness, teaching her how to recognize and report suspicious activities without compromising her normal childhood experiences. The training had been designed specifically for her age and position, balancing the need for security consciousness with the importance of allowing her to develop normally as a young person. Morrison observed that Princess Charlotte had internalized these security lessons without becoming paranoid or fearful about her daily activities. She continued to engage enthusiastically with her education, public duties, and personal interests while maintaining awareness of her surroundings that would help her identify potential threats in the future. The formal recognition of Princess Charlotte's contribution to national security had been carefully managed to acknowledge her heroism while protecting her privacy and safety. A special commendation had been created by intelligence services specifically to honor her actions, though the details would remain classified to prevent unwanted attention from hostile interests. Morrison had received his own commendation for his role in protecting Princess Charlotte during the crisis and ensuring that crucial evidence reached appropriate authorities. The recognition acknowledged that his quick thinking and professional judgment had been essential for the successful resolution of a situation that could have had catastrophic consequences. The palace staff changes that had resulted from the investigation had been extensive but necessary, with comprehensive background reviews leading to the removal of several individuals whose positions could have been exploited by future conspiracies. The hiring and vetting processes for all palace positions had been completely restructured to prevent similar infiltration attempts. Princess Charlotte had handled the disruption to familiar palace routines with remarkable adaptability, understanding that the changes were necessary for everyone's safety while maintaining her natural warmth toward new staff members who had undergone the enhanced security screening procedures. Morrison noticed that Princess Charlotte's relationship with technology had evolved since the crisis, with her developing a sophisticated understanding of how electronic devices could be used both for gathering evidence and for unauthorized surveillance. She had become more cautious about digital communications while learning to use technology effectively for legitimate purposes. The recording device that had captured Tom's conspiracy had been preserved as evidence in the criminal proceedings, but Princess Charlotte had been given a replica as a memento of her courageous actions. Morrison sometimes observed her looking at the device thoughtfully, seemingly reflecting on how a simple decision to investigate suspicious sounds had led to such significant consequences. The trial proceedings had concluded with lengthy prison sentences for all the conspirators, but Morrison knew that Princess Charlotte's role in achieving these convictions had established her as a potential target for retaliation attempts by associates of the convicted individuals or similar organizations that might view her as a threat to their operations. Intelligence agencies continued to monitor communications and activities related to the international network that had been exposed, watching for any signs that remaining operatives might attempt to target Princess Charlotte or other members of the royal family in revenge for the successful prosecution of their colleagues. Princess Charlotte's public appearances had resumed their normal schedule, but with enhanced security measures that remained invisible to casual observers while providing additional protection against both traditional threats and the sophisticated surveillance and infiltration techniques that the conspiracy had employed. Morrison had noticed that Princess Charlotte's confidence in public settings had actually increased since the crisis, as if successfully confronting genuine danger had reduced her anxiety about routine security concerns. She engaged more naturally with crowds and seemed more comfortable with the attention that came with her public role. The educational curriculum that had been developed for Princess Charlotte now included regular briefings on security awareness and international affairs that helped her understand the broader context of threats facing the royal family. These lessons were presented in age-appropriate ways that informed her without creating unnecessary anxiety about her daily activities. Morrison appreciated that Princess Charlotte's parents had made the decision to keep her informed about relevant security developments rather than trying to shield her from information that she was mature enough to handle. Her involvement in exposing the conspiracy had demonstrated that she could be trusted with serious responsibilities and that her intelligence and judgment were valuable assets for her own protection. The relationship between Morrison and Princess Charlotte had evolved beyond the traditional bodyguard-principal dynamic into genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared experience. She trusted his judgment completely, while he had learned to value her observations and instincts as important components of their collective security awareness. Princess Charlotte had developed friendships with other young people who faced similar security challenges, including children of government officials and foreign diplomats who understood the unique pressures that came with living under constant protection. These relationships provided her with emotional support from peers who shared her experiences. Morrison coordinated with the protection details of Princess Charlotte's friends to ensure that social activities could proceed normally while maintaining appropriate security measures. The cooperation between different security agencies had improved significantly as a result of lessons learned during the conspiracy investigation. The international recognition of Princess Charlotte's contribution to exposing the intelligence network had come from the highest levels of allied governments, though most of these acknowledgments remained private to protect her safety and privacy. Morrison knew that she had earned the respect of professional intelligence officers and security experts worldwide. Princess Charlotte's academic performance had remained excellent throughout the crisis and its aftermath, demonstrating that her involvement in serious adult affairs had not negatively impacted her educational development. Her teachers noted that she seemed more focused and mature, as if the experience had clarified her understanding of her future responsibilities. Morrison observed that Princess Charlotte had developed a deeper appreciation for the people who worked to protect her and her family, often expressing gratitude for security measures that might have seemed routine or intrusive before she understood the genuine threats they were designed to counter. The palace's relationship with intelligence and security agencies had been fundamentally transformed by the crisis, with new protocols for information sharing and threat assessment that ensured better coordination between royal protection services and national security operations. Princess Charlotte's experience had demonstrated the importance of treating royal family members as potential intelligence assets rather than simply persons requiring protection. Morrison knew that the conspiracy's exposure had established Princess Charlotte as someone who would always be taken seriously by security professionals, regardless of her age. Her proven ability to detect and report sophisticated threats had earned her a unique position within the royal family's security structure. The psychological support that had been provided to Princess Charlotte during and after the investigation had helped her process the traumatic aspects of her experience while reinforcing the positive aspects of her courageous actions. Morrison was relieved to see that she had emerged from the crisis stronger and more confident rather than fearful or traumatized. Princess Charlotte's interest in security and intelligence matters had developed naturally from her experience, and she often asked thoughtful questions about how protection operations worked and what threats security professionals were trained to counter. Morrison appreciated her curiosity and found that explaining these concepts helped reinforce her own security awareness. The technology upgrades that had been implemented throughout the palace as a result of the investigation had created one of the most secure environments in the world, with surveillance and communication systems that could detect and counter the sophisticated techniques that had been employed by Tom's conspiracy. Morrison reflected on how much both he and Princess Charlotte had grown during the crisis and its aftermath. The experience had tested their judgment, courage, and partnership in ways that had strengthened their professional relationship while deepening their mutual respect and trust. Princess Charlotte's future role in the royal family would undoubtedly be influenced by her demonstrated ability to handle serious responsibilities and make difficult decisions under pressure. Morrison knew that her experience with the conspiracy had prepared her for challenges that most people would never face, while also establishing her credibility with the security and intelligence professionals who would protect her throughout her life. The ongoing investigation into related intelligence networks meant that Princess Charlotte might be called upon to provide additional testimony or assistance in future cases, a responsibility that she had accepted with characteristic grace and determination to ensure that similar threats could be prevented or quickly detected. Morrison looked forward to continuing his role in Princess Charlotte's protection, knowing that their shared experience had created a foundation of trust and cooperation that would serve them well in facing whatever challenges the future might bring. Her courage and intelligence had already proven invaluable in protecting her family and country, and he was confident that these qualities would continue to make her an extraordinary member of the royal family. 2 years had passed since Princess Charlotte's courageous exposure of Tom Parker Bowles' conspiracy, and the ripple effects of her actions continued to influence royal family security, international intelligence cooperation, and her own development as a future leader. Morrison watched with pride as the young princess, now 11 years old, had grown into her role with a wisdom and confidence that reflected her extraordinary experience. The anniversary of the conspiracy's discovery had become an unofficial milestone within palace security circles, marking not just the successful resolution of a crisis but the evolution of protection protocols that had fundamentally changed how royal family safety was maintained. Princess Charlotte's actions had established new standards for threat detection and response that were now being implemented by security services worldwide. Morrison's relationship with Princess Charlotte had deepened into something approaching genuine partnership, with her insights and observations becoming valuable components of the ongoing security assessment process. Her ability to notice subtle changes in palace routines or staff behavior had proven remarkably useful for identifying potential security concerns before they could develop into serious threats. "Sergeant Major," Princess Charlotte said during one of their morning briefings, "I've been thinking about something Mrs. Peterson mentioned yesterday about the new communications equipment being installed in the East Wing." Morrison immediately gave her his full attention, having learned to take all of her observations seriously. Her comment about the conspiracy had begun with similar casual observations that had seemed unimportant initially but proved to be crucial intelligence. "What specifically caught your attention, Your Royal Highness?" "She seemed to know a lot of technical details about equipment that hasn't been officially announced yet," Charlotte replied thoughtfully. "And she was asking questions about which rooms would have the new systems installed, which seemed unusual for someone in her position." Morrison felt the familiar alertness that accompanied potential security concerns. Mrs. Peterson was a relatively new staff member who had been hired after the enhanced vetting procedures were implemented, but Princess Charlotte's observation suggested the need for immediate investigation into her background and activities. "I'll look into that right away," Morrison assured her. "Your instincts about these things have proven very reliable, and we can't afford to ignore any potential security issues." Princess Charlotte nodded with the serious demeanor that had become characteristic when discussing security matters. "I hope I'm wrong, but after what happened with Tom, I think it's better to be too careful than not careful enough." Her mature perspective on security awareness reflected the profound impact that her earlier experience had on her understanding of the threats facing her family. Rather than making her fearful or paranoid, the crisis had developed her natural observational skills into a valuable security asset. Morrison immediately initiated a discreet investigation into Mrs. Peterson's activities and background, coordinating with Commander Walsh to examine her hiring process and current access to sensitive information. The investigation techniques that had been developed following the Tom Parker Bowles conspiracy were now routine procedures for addressing potential security concerns. The results of the investigation confirmed Princess Charlotte's suspicions in ways that were both troubling and impressive.
Mrs.
Peterson had indeed been gathering information about palace communications systems, apparently as part of a much smaller but potentially significant intelligence operation that bore similarities to the conspiracy that Princess Charlotte had previously exposed. Commander Walsh briefed Morrison on the investigation's findings during an emergency security meeting. Princess Charlotte's observation led us to discover that Mrs. Peterson was part of a freelance intelligence gathering operation targeting several government facilities, not just the palace. Her questions about communications equipment were part of a systematic effort to identify vulnerabilities in secure communication systems. Morrison felt a familiar surge of pride in Princess Charlotte's alertness and judgment. Once again, her ability to detect suspicious behavior had potentially prevented a significant security breach, demonstrating that her earlier heroism had not been simply a matter of fortunate timing but reflected genuine skills that continued to develop.
How extensive was Mrs. Peterson's access to sensitive information? Morrison asked.
Limited, fortunately, Commander Walsh replied. The enhanced vetting procedures prevented her from gaining access to truly critical systems, but she had gathered enough information to potentially compromise some communication protocols if her operation had continued undetected. The swift resolution of the Mrs. Peterson situation demonstrated how effectively the security improvements implemented after the Tom Parker Bowles conspiracy were functioning to detect and counter similar threats. Princess Charlotte's role in identifying the potential problem highlighted the value of treating royal family members as active participants in their own security rather than simply persons requiring protection. Princess Charlotte received the news of Mrs. Peterson's arrest with the same composed maturity that had characterized her response to the original conspiracy. Morrison observed that she seemed relieved to have been proven correct about her suspicions, but also somewhat saddened by the confirmation that threats to her family's safety remained an ongoing concern. "I suppose this means we always have to be watching for people who might want to hurt us," she said quietly during their discussion of the investigation's conclusion.
"Unfortunately, yes," Morrison replied honestly.
"But it also means that we've developed the skills and procedures necessary to identify and stop these threats before they can cause serious harm. Your alertness and good judgment are important parts of keeping everyone safe." Princess Charlotte's academic performance had continued to excel despite her involvement in serious security matters, with her teachers noting that her analytical skills and attention to detail had improved significantly since her experience with the conspiracy. Her ability to balance normal childhood development with adult responsibilities continued to impress everyone who worked with her. The specialized education program that had been developed for Princess Charlotte now included regular case studies of security situations and international affairs that helped her understand the broader context of threats facing not just the royal family but democratic institutions worldwide. These lessons were presented as intellectual exercises that developed her critical thinking skills while providing practical security awareness. Morrison appreciated that Princess Charlotte's parents had maintained their decision to keep her informed about security developments in age-appropriate ways rather than attempting to shield her from information that she had proven capable of handling responsibly. Her involvement in identifying the Mrs. Peterson threat reinforced the wisdom of treating her as a valuable partner in her own protection. The international recognition of Princess Charlotte's contributions to security and intelligence operations had continued to grow, with several allied intelligence agencies specifically requesting consultation on developing threat detection protocols for protecting high-profile individuals. Her insights had influenced security procedures for government officials and royal family members in multiple countries. Morrison coordinated with international security professionals who wanted to study the methods that had proven successful in Princess Charlotte's protection, sharing lessons learned while maintaining appropriate confidentiality about specific procedures and capabilities. The cooperation between different agencies had improved dramatically as a result of the relationships built during the original conspiracy investigation. Princess Charlotte had developed friendships with young people from other countries who faced similar security challenges, including children of heads of state and senior government officials who understood the unique aspects of growing up under constant protection. These relationships provided her with emotional support and practical insights from peers who shared her experiences. The communication systems that Princess Charlotte used to maintain these friendships incorporated the highest levels of security technology, ensuring that her personal relationships could develop normally while protecting sensitive information about her activities and location. Morrison coordinated with multiple international security agencies to maintain these protective measures. Princess Charlotte's public appearances had evolved to reflect her growing maturity and demonstrated competence in handling complex situations. She was given more substantial roles in official ceremonies and charitable activities, with her proven ability to remain composed under pressure making her a valuable asset for the royal family's public duties. Morrison observed that Princess Charlotte's confidence in public settings continued to grow, as if her success in confronting genuine dangers had eliminated most normal anxieties about routine public attention. She engaged naturally with crowds and seemed genuinely comfortable with the responsibilities that came with her position. The technology training that Princess Charlotte received as part of her security education had developed her understanding of both the benefits and risks associated with modern communications equipment. She had become skilled at using secure communication devices while maintaining awareness of how similar technology could be exploited by hostile interests. Morrison appreciated Princess Charlotte's sophisticated understanding of digital security concepts, knowing that her technological literacy would be essential for maintaining her safety in an increasingly connected world where traditional physical protection measures needed to be supplemented by cybersecurity awareness. The palace's relationship with academic institutions had been strengthened by Princess Charlotte's demonstrated intellectual abilities and her unique practical experience with security matters. Several universities had expressed interest in developing case studies based on her experiences, though these academic projects remained classified to protect operational security. Princess Charlotte's interest in international relations and security studies had developed naturally from her practical experience, and she often asked thoughtful questions about global affairs and diplomatic relationships that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of complex political dynamics. Morrison knew that Princess Charlotte's future role in the royal family would certainly include responsibilities related to security and intelligence matters, given her proven abilities and the respect she had earned from professional security and intelligence personnel. Her experience had prepared her for challenges that most people would never face while establishing her credibility with experts in these fields. The ongoing evolution of threats facing the royal family meant that Princess Charlotte's skills in threat detection and security awareness would remain valuable throughout her life. Morrison was confident that the training and experience she had received would serve her well in whatever challenges the future might bring. Princess Charlotte's relationship with her protection detail had become a model for how security personnel could work effectively with intelligent and observant principals who were capable of contributing to their own safety. The mutual respect and trust between Princess Charlotte and Morrison had created a partnership that enhanced security effectiveness while maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. The psychological support systems that had been established for Princess Charlotte continued to help her process the ongoing realities of living under enhanced security while maintaining normal emotional and social development. Morrison was pleased to see that she had adapted successfully to her unique circumstances without becoming fearful or socially isolated. Princess Charlotte's charitable interests had expanded to include organizations focused on supporting families affected by security threats and intelligence operations, reflecting her understanding of how these activities impacted ordinary people who became involved in situations beyond their control. Her advocacy work demonstrated genuine empathy for others who faced similar challenges. Morrison reflected on how much both he and Princess Charlotte had grown during their partnership, recognizing that their shared experiences had created a foundation of trust and cooperation that would serve them well regardless of what future challenges they might face together. Princess Charlotte's legacy as someone who had courageously exposed a significant threat to national security was already inspiring young people in multiple countries to take civic responsibility seriously and to trust their instincts when they observed suspicious activities. Her example demonstrated that age did not necessarily limit someone's ability to make important contributions to public safety. The security improvements that had been implemented as a result of Princess Charlotte's actions continued to protect not just the royal family but government officials and other high-profile individuals whose safety was essential for democratic governance. Her courage had literally helped preserve institutions that millions of people depended on for stability and security. Morrison looked forward to continuing his role in Princess Charlotte's protection, knowing that their partnership had proven its value multiple times and would undoubtedly face future tests that would require the same combination of professional expertise, personal courage, and mutual trust that had served them so well in confronting previous challenges. Princess Charlotte's transformation from a curious child into a young woman who understood both the privileges and responsibilities of her position had been remarkable to observe. Morrison felt honored to have played a role in her development while learning valuable lessons about courage, judgment, and service that would influence his own career for years to come. As Princess Charlotte continued to grow into her future role as a senior member of the royal family, Morrison was confident that her proven ability to detect threats, make difficult decisions under pressure, and maintain composure in challenging situations would make her an extraordinary leader who could face whatever challenges the future might hold with wisdom, courage, and integrity.